So I don't know about anybody else, but February has just flown by, and I actually had done a bit of filming the last few weeks, like during the week, but I didn't like the footage, and last week was just absolutely nuts when it came to work, so I was not able to film then at all. I finally have finished a book. This is my first book I finished for 2025, and I don't even want to check my Goodreads for what I was reading last year, but last year I wasn't working, so I was getting through like 8 books a month. Having only read 1 book so far this year feels hard for me because obviously this channel was started to talk about the books that I'm reading, but I'm proud of myself because of how much I have going on in my life right now. The fact that I could even incorporate reading at all is something I'm very proud of. And I think it's just gone to show that that time off where I was reading tons of books, I saw a really big benefit in myself, and I liked how reading was improving who I was as a person. And so it's a habit that I want to keep up no matter how busy I am. So during my time off, I read a lot, but I did actually listen to a lot of audiobooks. I know there's all of this back and forth about whether audiobooks are actually books and whatnot, but I love audiobooks. I find them really helpful to get through. I am working as a lawyer, and most of my day I'm spending reading cases, reading emails, reading documents, and so a lot of the time by the end of the day I just don't have the energy to sit down and read a book. I only can really read books right now on the weekend. So listening to audiobooks is a way I can still incorporate reading throughout my work week. So the book I finished is Mask Off: Masculinity Redefined by J.J. Balla. And this is part of the Pluto Press, their Outspoken series. This is the second book in that series that I've read. The first one was Feminism Interrupted by Lola Olufemi, both books by Black authors. My thoughts about this one are very similar to my thoughts about that one. I think very good introductory book. So if you are someone that doesn't know a lot really about men, masculinity, patriarchy, the way in which patriarchy shapes men's lives, this would be the book I would say to start with. I started by reading The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, which I read, I think it was in 2023 I read that book. And for me, I would say this is more introductory than Bell Hooks's book. So I didn't really gain a lot from it. So for myself, I would probably give it like a 3 out of 5. But I think overall, the book is probably more like a 4 out of 5 because the information that it gives is really helpful. There's nothing in here that I necessarily disagreed with. I just found it a little bit too introductory to gain tons from it. But I still did gain a little bit, like I have a few bookmarks here. My favorite chapters were the first chapter, Real Men, Myths of Masculinity. That chapter looked at a lot of the myths about men, like real men do this, men are more logical than women, men are trash, the idea that men don't cry. The part that I liked the most was masculinity as performance, and the author talks about Judith Butler and her book Gender Trouble, Feminism and the Subversion of Identity. And he really just talks about the way in which masculinity can be considered to be a performance and the way in which now we define certain things as being masculine, very much just a sign of the times. And he gives the example of in the 17th century how a lot of men, particularly upper class men, would wear high heels, whereas obviously now that's something that is not looked upon as something that men do. So that idea of like masculinity is really shaped by society. It's not an inherent thing. I also found the chapter on sport somewhat interesting because in that chapter he talks about sports as being one of the few places where it is acceptable for men to show emotion, to cry, either happy tears or tears of loss. So I thought that was interesting. I haven't really seen an author dealing with this subject matter deal with sports. So overall, a good introductory book. If you are interested in this topic but like have no idea where to start, I would recommend this. Pluto Press are a UK publishing company. What I do like about their books is when you purchase a physical copy, you get a free copy of the ebook. I actually ended up purchasing the audiobook and listening to that. I don't think I would have been able to get through it if it wasn't for the audiobook. It just was too introductory, and I have very little time to spend reading, and I just wasn't finding it was challenging enough. That was my first read of the year, and I'm just really glad that I got through a book. So I talked in another video about books that I wanted to read for February. I only gave myself 2 books, but that still was way too ambitious. I have not started the other book that I had mentioned, and I am about, I would say like a third through The Second Sex. I realistically think I'll finish this in April. I probably could finish it next month, but I don't want to push myself. And just to give you an idea, like this is a book I think is for my level, and look at the number of annotations I have for this one compared to Mask Off by J.G. Balla. I am loving this book. I am getting so much out of it. And I bought this book from my local used bookstore. I think I spent like $10 on it. And I'm just like, this is like getting a free education for $10. It just shows the power of books. And I had really been struggling with nonfiction lately. I think because a lot of nonfiction I don't find particularly challenging. By that I mean the information in it is new to me, so I'm learning new things, but I'm not learning new vocabulary. I'm not having ideas that sort of challenge my thinking, which is what I am getting from The Second Sex. So I am honestly loving it. So far I've read 3 chapters, and I believe I'm on my 4th. So I started by reading The Women in Love. Then I read Prostitutes and Heterias. I think that's how you pronounce that. Then I read The Narcissist. I am currently partway through 2 chapters actually. The Married Woman, which I started reading that a few weeks ago, maybe last weekend or the weekend before, and I was liking it, but it wasn't quite what I wanted to focus on. So then this weekend I've started reading The Mother, and I'm really, really liking that chapter. I have about 10 pages left, but I wanted to make sure I filmed before I lost sunlight. So far this chapter, The Mother, is looking at, well, it started by looking at abortion, which unfortunately is still something that we have to talk about now. I mean, this book was written in, I think, 1948, but yeah, it was written in 1949, so close enough. So she talks in the beginning about abortion and how a lot of men, legislators, those sort of people who are against abortion, have no issue with war or, you know, the death penalty. So the idea that a fetus is a person, and so a woman having an abortion is murder, it's just like very hypocritical, because it's not, murder is not something they worry about in other contexts. She then talks about the danger of abortions in places where abortions are illegal, especially for people who are of the lower class. And then a part I found really interesting was the idea that for a lot of women who have abortion, they have these feelings of resentment towards the men that cause them to have the abortion, even in instances where the woman wanted the abortion herself, or even in instances where it was with someone who was, let's say, a lover, a partner who they still are in a relationship with after the fact. And she talks about the impact that the abortion actually has on a woman physically. For some women, they lose their interest in sex after having an abortion, and how for a lot of men it's sort of like an assumption that a woman will have an abortion, but for a woman, even if they want it, it is a much bigger undertaking on themselves and their physical bodies. So I found that part of it very interesting. Next in that chapter, she talks about pregnancy and how different women either struggle with or love pregnancy. And then the part I'm reading right now is motherhood. And this part I'm finding very interesting. I remember Bell Hooks talking about this concept also. I can't remember which of her books she mentions it in, but it's this idea that within patriarchy, men benefit from patriarchy because they're able to oppress women. But women benefit within patriarchy by being able to dominate and oppress children, and how some women like motherhood because they now have someone that they are able to oppress. She also talks in that part about how some mothers are masochistic and others are sadists in terms of the way they treat being a mother. So that part I'm finding extremely fascinating. So I had sort of stopped in that section because I just felt like I wasn't really giving it the time I needed to. So I'm gonna go back and read that, and like I said, come chat about it a little bit more after. Also, going back to the section about abortion at the beginning of this chapter, another part of that I found really interesting is she talks about the fact that these legislators are so involved in making sure these women do not abort their child, but there's often so few supports out there for women who have children, like public assistance for people who are struggling, who maybe financially cannot afford to have a child. So it's like you can't be that intrusive about governing a woman's ability to have a child when you know that there are not the appropriate supports there to help her if she is going to have a child. And they also talk about the lack of governance for people who have children and, you know, are child abusers, or the child might die from malnutrition, right? So you can't really have all of these stringent forces literally forcing women to have children when you know you don't have the adequate social support for people in general. So I found those parts really interesting. I think probably because of the fact that I work in like child protection law, and I'm seeing a lot of children who are growing up in families that are really difficult, and how the state just like has so few supports for people yet punishes them when they are unable to look after a child the way the state considers to be appropriate. So yeah, I'm working my way through this, really liking it, and will give a little bit of a further update as I keep progressing through it. I also have started listening to another audiobook, and that is Radical Intimacy. I've been wanting to read this book for a while, and the audiobook finally became available from my library, so I've been listening to that. It became available yesterday, so I just started yesterday and today. And what this book basically looks at is the ways in which capitalism forces certain types of relationships and sort of criticizes that. So this chapter is looking at romantic relationships and talking about where the idea of the nuclear family came from, how the nuclear family is beneficial for capitalism as opposed to people living in bigger community groups, and then the ways in which our society essentially forces us into nuclear families, like how you get certain tax benefits for being married, ways in which some people might want alternative relationship styles, but how it can be a challenge to do so. Not too challenging of a read, I will admit, so perfect for an audiobook, and it's only a 5-hour audiobook, so I don't think I'm going to finish it by the end of February, but I will finish it before my 21 days are over, assuming I still make time to listen to it. So I think that's gonna be it for like book content in this video. Like I said, I'm not reading tons and tons of books right now. I'm doing lots of things, but I'm not being as strict with myself about reading. I am just finding I have other priorities right now, so I do still want reading to remain a hobby in my life, but I don't want it to be as much of a focus as it was in the past. So this weekend was a weekend I had to basically just take it easy. I've been working from home, which has been really nice. The thing with working from home is there are like certain parts of my apartment that I'd really been struggling with and not liking. So I had ordered some home items and they came on Friday, and so I used yesterday to like reorganize my space, move things around. I then ended up going to IKEA and purchased actually this bad boy, and then also a bar cart, because I have an obscene amount of alcohol. I do not drink that often, but I've hosted a few like parties and people have brought things over, and I just like never drink them. So yeah, I've just been trying to like reorganize my space, feel happy, feel confident in my space. And I hadn't really felt like I'd had tons of time to just like reorganize things. So I wanted to use what probably will be my like last weekend of not really making plans to do that. I find in the wintertime I tend to hibernate, but I really want to go into March being more social. I feel like March I really want to make time for like friends, because I'm just feeling, I had been feeling this way for a while, like a little bit of loneliness, and I didn't really understand where this feeling was coming from. I think the loneliness comes from like not feeling very connected to my friends lately. We see each other, which is nice, but not feeling connected during that like in-between phase when we're not seeing each other. And I also do think that loneliness stems from me like wanting to have a family. And it's funny because my mom just got Disney Plus, and so I've been using her membership and watching the Kardashian show on there. Didn't think I would like it, but I've actually really started to like it. Definitely a background show, not something I give like 100% of my attention, but I really like how big their family is and how like they're just in and out of each other's places. Their kids are all close. The sisters will like give advice to their nieces and nephews. Also how connected they are to their mom. And it all came from Kris, right? Like she had 6 children and just created this huge family for herself. And I feel like that's where that loneliness is coming from, because I feel like I have great people in my life, but that idea of like having people to come home to and like having like being in and out of families' houses or friends' houses is like something that I think I'm desiring, but for more than just myself. Okay, charge back. And just in general, and like all of them are really busy, yet they still find time to talk, a lot of the time like FaceTime or whatever it may be. Also, I really want to give Kim credit. Like her work ethic is unreal, and I want to be very successful in life. I want to have businesses. I definitely don't want to work for somebody else. I also definitely do not want to work my whole life as a lawyer. I am really grateful for the chance to have gone to law school, and I'm really grateful for the chance to be a lawyer. I think I would like being a lawyer so much more if I could just do it part-time, because my biggest frustration in all of my jobs as a lawyer is you just don't have enough time to give to things as I would want to, because you have so many different clients, so many different files. And now in this job, it's much better. Last week was like very, very stressful, like probably the most stressed I've ever been in a job, and I think there will be times that will be even more stressful than that. But at the same time, I feel like it showed me how much I can accomplish. It showed me how much I can do. And if I hadn't kept pushing myself in these jobs, I think I wouldn't have really discovered my potential. But that doesn't mean that I want to be a lawyer for the rest of my life. I don't want to have this level of stress and anxiety that I have. And I think it will decrease as I practice more. Like on Friday, I'll have a picture. I had a motion that I was going to have to argue. And so I spent time preparing. And like in my old job, like when I first got out of law school, I would have spent like days preparing. I would have like prepared all weekend. This time I woke up early and just prepared that morning. So I know I require less time to do things than I did before, and I'm really proud of myself for continuously pushing myself out of my comfort zone. But that doesn't mean that I want to always live my life like this. Like, I am very aware of stress and what stress does to the body, and I just don't think that this way of living, having this level of anxiety, is like really what I want for myself and for my life. So I do think I want to be a sole practitioner and just like have a few files and do that as I teach and do other things. Hopefully have a channel, because I really, really love YouTube. So I'm sort of gaining this experience that I'll then use to set up on my own eventually, because I am really only interested in child protection law. So this is what I would want to do. This is the area I'd want to practice in. So the way I see this job now is like a way to get a steady income while essentially having to work in a similar way to a sole practitioner. Watching the Kardashians and seeing Kim's work ethic showed me that like I do want to be that sort of person that puts a lot of time and effort into the things that they're doing, even if it means like sacrificing sleep. I do also want to be there and like present for family and for friends, and so that just means like continuously pushing myself even when I don't feel like doing things. Like actually watching the Kardashians yesterday is what made me clean my entire apartment and then go to IKEA afterwards, because I was like, oh, I can do all of these things. And I did do all of those things, and I still feel fairly rested, if I'm being honest. Okay, I think those are all the like Kardashian things. Okay, so I feel like that's been a lot of chatting about me and my life. I want to just go and show you some of the things that I did in my apartment. Oh, before I get up, the other thing I'd wanted to say is previously on my channel, I had talked about sustainability. This is a little bit more on my other channel, but I talked about how I wanted to start sewing. I wanted to start working on buying from sustainable brands only. And I have actually changed my view on that. I was just thinking about it, and I'm like, the things that I purchased from brands that might not have been sustainable, but that were exactly what I wanted, I like use those things until they are falling apart. Like I've bought a few things from Aritzia and I just love them so much. I wear them nonstop. I have some home decor things from H&M Home that I have had for years. And I just think that it makes more sense to buy things that are exactly what I want. Not super cheap things that are gonna fall apart, like things that are pretty decent quality, but it doesn't have to be from a sustainable company. And so I placed a purchase for things from H&M Home, and I haven't ordered from them in like 2, possibly 3 years. And I love all of the things that I bought from there, like with almost all of them. They seem really good. They're like exactly what I've been looking for. And so yeah, I think that whole concept of like buying from sustainable brands, it's good to do. And I still have found really good sustainable brands that I will be looking at, but I'm not going to force it if it isn't meant to be. So I have a few purchases that I made over the last little bit for my home, and they are not sustainable, but they are things that I've been really wanting for a long time, so I was okay to take the plunge and to purchase them. I just had been getting a lot of alcohol and things like that from parties, and just need to, I'm a very visual person, so if I don't see it, I forget about it. I also love soju, which is why I have so much of that in the front. And these are some of my like favorite drinkware pieces. This guy, these like blue stemmed ones, I actually got those from the Salvation Army. They were super cheap. I just spent some time because they were a little bit, what's it called, like cloudy. So I spent some time trying to clean them off, but I love them. I think they're super pretty. And I actually have not used them yet, so I want to use those. And then these guys I got from Amazon, I believe. They just remind me of glasses I've seen at like CB2 and places like that. And then down there just got a little bit more alcohol. And then I have been wanting a yellow gingham tablecloth for like a year now. There's one I saw that I really liked from a sustainable company, but it was just way too expensive for me to really justify it. And then H&M had this guy and it was perfect. This table is actually an old table that my parents had. Like my parents had this table for like 20 years, and then I took it when I went to law school. I think eventually I will get rid of it, but I'm really enjoying having tablecloths right now, so I'm not gonna rush to get rid of it yet. This is also something I got from H&M Home, and then I really like Werther's Originals, so I have those. And this is actually from, this bowl was actually from the Salvation Army. I love picking up little like bowls and decor pieces like that from thrift stores. These mats were from Target. I got those a few years ago, and yeah, the tablecloth is the new one I picked up. But I just really like what it's done for the space, and I personally really like the orange, yellow and pink together. And then I also got this table from IKEA. It was very easy to put together and actually was not too expensive. So I had another laptop table, which I do really like. I got from my mom, and it's like glass and black. But I have really been wanting to add a bit more color to my apartment. I obviously have this beautiful pink couch, but I like the orange and pink look together. So I purchased that, and I've just been using that to eat in front of the television. If you're new, this channel is all about re-education and decolonizing the mind. I created this channel as a way to share the things that I'm learning. I am on a process of decolonizing my own mind and re-educating my mind, and all of the things that I'm reading and learning, I just wanted to share with the world, and also have a way of sort of having like a video journal, video diary of what's going on in my life. So yeah, I am very excited to keep this going. Thanks.